Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming. We just have a quick hour today, and we're going to be first have a presentation from Silicon Valley Community Foundation's Choose Children, and talk a little bit about what the purpose is and what they're going to be doing. And as you all know, we co-hosted with them a candidate forum specifically focused on children's issues for Board of Supervisors District 2 and District 3 together. If you happen to have missed it, it's still up on our YouTube channel, so you can go back and listen again. We're hoping to have more conversations around this now that both District 2 and District 3 supervisors are going to be in runoffs. So there will be elections in November for those two positions, as well as state senate and others. So again, if you just came on, you could probably tell that the question is, what is your favorite kids book? I'm going to quickly just take you through a couple of events that are coming up at Thrive, and then I will hand it over to Christine. So coming up at the end of June, we are actually having our environmental sustainability Thrive Action Group work together with the Basic Needs and Safety Net Group to talk about a bill that passed in the California State Senate and California legislature, and it started in the beginning of January, where companies are required to not waste as much food. And so it's made it easier to do food rescue. And the idea is that this will keep food out of the landfill. So it's a great combination of both the environment and our basic needs. So we actually have some terrific speakers from Samaritan House, from Loaves and Fishes, from Second Harvest, from the Office of Sustainability, to talk about the connections between food producers and how to get that to groups. So actually, if any of your organizations are interested in figuring out ways to get free food, this would be a good event to come to. Next slide. So we also are feeling ready to get back and really focus on the arts again. We kind of took a bit of a hiatus during COVID, as the arts organizations did. And we're really interested in reconnecting with the arts organizations. In August, the County of San Mateo is going to be doing a whole month featuring arts and culture from in the county. And so this is an opportunity. We're going to be offering lunch for arts organizations to really get together and talk about that and the future, and basically how to make arts continue to be a vibrant thing in San Mateo County as we come out of, I hate to say out of the pandemic, but as we come into this next phase. Okay, and next slide. You're also welcome to join us, as always, for a voter outreach and education group. We're going to be talking about voter outreach and how it went. We had quite low turnout in this last election, despite a lot of effort. So we're going to talk about why and what we can do about that. I think you know all year we've been doing every other month for the employees of nonprofits, and you're welcome to bring your entire staff, Wellness Wednesdays, and this one is all about gratitude. So please join us for that as well. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn this over to Marnie and Christine to talk about Choose Children.
Great. Thank you, Petra. It's really a pleasure to be here. And I'm looking, we were just going to keep this as a really informal conversation because I felt like a lot of folks in this group would have probably already heard about the Choose Children campaign. But are there some, can I just have like a little show of hands or an indication if you want me to go through the some of the polling results and data that we had, if that would be new information, or is it repetitive for folks? That's a yes, go through it. Okay. All right. Well, then we'll take a few minutes to go through, and I will I will share my screen, but not to make things too complicated. Just very high level. And Marnie, feel free to jump in here and add any 2 cents in our initiative. But Choose Children is a program of the Silicon Valley Community Foundation with lots of partners. We're going to have a few minutes today to talk about want more partners. And the whole point is to elevate the issues that are important to young children, their families, and those that care for them in the local election cycle, and really to take advantage of the opportunity election presents for us to educate candidates who will then take a public office, but also to educate the public and engage the public in the discussion. And so our approach has a few different prongs to it and strategies of what we're doing. So one is strategic voter survey or polling to understand what likely November voters are feeling around these issues and what they would support and where some of the pain points are for them with related to having young children here. And then also direct candidate engagement. So we have during the primary season, we identified, we were focusing on 4 different races, 2 in San Mateo County, the District 2 and 3, as Petra mentioned. So we were able to brief all those candidates, 14 candidates in general across the 2 counties on early childhood issues. And then we hosted co-hosted 4 different forums where the candidates, and you're going to talk about that one of them today. And then we also, the third portion of our strategy is related to public outreach and engaging the public. And I want to ask your advice about that today. So how can we generate more support for these issues so that we can, when we go to engage with the candidates, they will see that there's a lot of momentum and movement behind it. So that is our definite plan. We started in the primary, we ramped up very quickly, and we did a lot of candidate engagement. We have a brief pause right now because we just finished the primary, so we're stepping back, we're reevaluating what comes next, and then we'll be ramping back up and engaging through till the November election, and there'll be more opportunities for public engagement. So let me share my screen. Apparently I can share my screen, and I hope I do this properly. I've just recently redone my laptop setup. So let's see. Are you seeing my San Mateo, not my presenter slides, but the right ones? Good, 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 good. So we did a poll or a countywide survey of likely November voters. This was done in the last 10 days or so of March, so quite recent. We used FM3 Research as our research firm, as our partners to do the work. There we go. We polled 729 folks in San Mateo County. We did an oversampling in districts 2 and 3, and it was done in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese to try to reach as many people as possible. So we just tested a little bit about what the mood of the county was to see where likely voters were thinking. And we really, not entirely unsurprising, we found that folks are feeling the pain of being able to afford to live here. And in San Mateo County, 81% of voters, and in fact, that goes up to 86% of parents with children under 5, say that they're not confident that their future generations will be able to live here. And for any of us who are particularly, I have young adult children, and I know for them, the thought of being able to move back here after college is really a tough one. Despite wanting to live here, the cost of living is really tough. So it's not too surprising. But what we really found that was, I would say, disturbing for us and alarming in many ways was how many are actually claiming that they're seriously considering leaving the Bay Area. And in San Mateo County, about 50% of likely voters, and that number goes up to 58% if you're a parent with children under 5, are seriously considering leaving the Bay Area in the next few years. And so for us, that was a big red flag of how do you build a vibrant economy and a wonderful place to live if almost 60% of our young families are thinking that they're going to leave. So we asked also what their views on childcare and early education were. Oh, I've skipped some of these for you guys so that because we have so little time. If anybody wants at a later date to dig more deeply into them, I'm happy to meet with you and talk a little bit more deeply about some of the results. And Marnie, maybe you can throw in the chat where they can get the press release too, so they can have a chance to look at them. But of parents, either current parents with children under 5 or parents who had children, so now they have children 6 to 18, so thinking back to when they were under childcare, 55% of them claim that it's really a great deal or some strain to be able to afford. And we really found with the results in terms of what was impacting and a big concern for our families is that housing and the cost of living were number one. But once we added the cost of childcare, that bumped up for many families with young children. It really became a serious pain point for them. And we found that families reported having to make very difficult decisions due to the cost of childcare. And these numbers were very similar across the 2 counties, but they differed somewhat slightly. But here in San Mateo, about 41% claimed they were delaying having another child because of the expense. One that was really hard for me to see is that about 1/3 of parents are selecting childcare that's lower quality than they would like because of the cost. And, it's not all that surprising, but it's really hard for me to think about a parent who has to make that challenge, that difficult decision to hand their little one over to somebody to care for them, and it's not the quality of care that they were hoping for. So our families are feeling the pain, and they're not super happy about it, and it's making tough trade-offs. And what was interesting is we found that this was across all different income levels, that this was not something that was definitely really feeling for folks with low or very low income, that this was a real pain point. But we also saw it as a concern for folks who are here in the $120,000 to $150,000 range. And these are some of the folks of the highest rankings of saying that they would be thinking of leaving. And these are people who in other parts of the country and the state would be making a good income and can afford to leave. And they want to buy a house and they want to have less financial strain. And so that was what we were seeing, these issues are not solely within one economic area. But then the good news, and this is what we pulled as well, is how do you feel about supporting a variety of different initiatives that would help to address the high cost of childcare and the workforce issues and the things that we're experiencing? And overwhelmingly, first of all, the folks were generally very supportive of candidates who would support these issues. So for candidates, it's really, it's a winning issue. Very few people are against babies and young children. So most of them said, yep, they would like to see that. But then when asked for, we pulled about 15 different potential policies or programs that would help to support early childhood. And universally, they ranked extremely high. I think the lowest was actually, it had 2/3 support, and they went right up to 81% favorable support, which is really great. And these ranged from improving and providing family resource centers for children with special needs, providing healthcare benefits, retirement benefits, making sure that we had dedicated facilities. So we pulled a variety of different issues, and these are all in the press. You can find them through the press release. But almost universally, they were getting extremely high levels of support, which is great. So what that tells us is really that although people are feeling the pain, they are still very supportive of these issues and wanting to invest in them and wanting to invest publicly in them. So yeah, questions?
Hi, I'm Jane. I'm with Catholic Charities, and I just wondered if there was any polling around. We have on Treasure Island, we have a preschool that we run, and for low-income families, and the challenge is attracting teachers because of the very low pay that is provided to preschool teachers, that such a critical time in a child's life, such important work, and yet the pay is so very minimal. I'm just wondering if that was one of the pollings, or there was information around folks supporting that effort for salaries for preschool teachers.
We did ask as one of our policies or program initiatives to ensure that preschool teachers and childcare providers earn the same income as kindergarten teachers. And that got 72% favorability rating. So people were in favor of that. We also looked at a couple other initiatives that are not necessarily direct increasing wages, but looking at supports that can increase the amount of, or reduce the cost of running a childcare business, which could then increase the amount of revenue somebody can make. So providing something like a shared service alliance, that ranked very high as well. I'm just trying to see the specific ones that allowing childcare professionals to access government-sponsored healthcare benefits and retirement savings plans. So looking at avenues for building up that kind of having healthcare was a big thing we've heard from providers that they would like to see, and that's a cost. That again got 76% favorability rating. So we pulled a little bit of the workforce.
Thank you.
But of course, the big question is, how do you pay for that? And that this poll didn't get deep into the weeds of all the ways you pay for those kind of things. That would be more research that we'd have to be doing. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions about some of what we just shared? Because now I have a question for this group, if Petra will give me a few minutes, is that, so we've got this information, we've been engaging and educating the candidates and really helping to open their minds around that the world and needs of young children, that they're part, a whole child and is part of a family, part of a system and a community. So it goes beyond ensuring that we have childcare. That is a huge part of it, but it's beyond that. So we tried to make sure that they understood that there are a number of ways that local elected people in local office can support young children and families. But now, so I think we made progress. We got their ear. They made statements. You're going to talk about them today, which is awesome. But when we move into over the course of the summer and then into the fall, is that we really need to build them and mobilize this community to show up for making sure candidates hear this message. And another of our partners in this work shared with me that we had, well, Petra, I'm not sure how many we had on our, about 50, I think 55, something like that, which was actually like pretty good. Well, Rocket Ship in San Jose is the charter school network. They hosted a forum for the San Jose mayors, and we did as well down there. They had 1,000 people show up in person to the event. And that got the attention. And so we're thinking, how can we get, maybe we can't get 1,000 people, but how can we get some momentum and attention so that when we show up in front of the candidates and ask them these questions, they see that there are a lot of voters there. And so I would love to, if anyone wants to throw out ideas now, I will take Marnie, I'll take notes. If we want to brainstorm in the future about this, we will be reaching out to groups and through Thrive as well over the summer, because we're going to be looking for people to sign on to the Choose Children as a partner, which simply means that you would be supporting us and joining in these efforts. But we really want to think about, how do we get that momentum? There's so many amazing people doing amazing work in this space. And how do we get everybody to be able to show up and push on it? Heather, do you have thoughts?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for this question. I just absolutely love that we're thinking about this. But, this is really community and power building. And I think we call it out as, we want to build the power of the community in San Mateo County to have a direct effect talking to our public officials, and fund it appropriately, because this is new work for most of us. But I think that this is work that we really want to be doing because, as we heard earlier, we need that power to support our children. We're not going to get wage increases without that power. So my feeling is, just call it straight out as power building for our children, fund it, and organize it, and let's make it happen. And I'm the first to sign up.
I can probably find some funding if you can find some manpower. That's the ticket. So I agree with you. I would love to build out the more movement and power building with parent voice and practitioner voice, provider voice, that we are all about trying to do that. And I think that's the key to making the work move ahead and yeah, getting the changes we want. So, Linda.
Hi, everyone. I'm Linda Wolin. I use she, her pronouns, and I work for Supervisor Dave Pine. First of all, just following up on what Heather said about power building. Another thing, I mean, one of the things you just said, Christine, was getting voters out in front of elected officials. And I wonder, I mean, I think there's definitely a constituency for everything that we're talking about, but how many of them vote? Because traditionally we know that parents of small children in any demographic community are not necessarily the ones that are turning out for election, and particularly in this extremely low turnout election. I know, Petra, we're going to discuss this at the next VOC meeting, but some preliminary data that I saw showed that of the ridiculously low percentage of registered voters who participated in this recent election, more than half, from whatever date I was looking at, it's not comprehensive, more than half were over 60 and mostly white. So those are not, I mean, no offense to whatever, but not necessarily parents of young children who are participating in elections. So I think part of this question is, who is voting and when are they voting and how can we encourage this community to vote? And I wonder, Christine, I might have missed it in the presentation, but was that a question in your poll about whether the participants in the poll were planning to vote in the next election? Because I might suggest talk to your pollster about adding that next time around, just to see of this community if that's something that a manner in which they see using their voice is actually participating in elections.
I will check to see the exact wording, Linda, but these are people who declared themselves likely November voters. So I do believe these are people who, which is why I always have to caveat, like this is not a representative sampling of the entire population, because there are definitely folks who are, needing our childcare and subsidized childcare services who are not voters. So, but these would be declared likely voters. And I will say the one thing, and my partner Shai, who's helping with this work, I apologize. He should have been here to do this. He does a much better job interpreting these results and sharing them, but that it's become very apparent. And again, it goes to like who is voting, is that we cannot silo early childhood, or even not just early childhood, but childhood issues as an issue and on its own. We have got to make the connection back to the economic vibrancy and vitality of our region, the future of our region. We have to tie it into the cost of housing, the cost of living, community. Like that is what is resonating with voters, and we need to meet voters where they're at, as well as get out our own voter. Like we need to get out the vote, but we need to think of the children as the future of our county and our region, and the ability for parents to be at work and being effective workers because their children are safe, all those things. So it's a big, we're trying to rethink some of our messaging so that we are integrating it much more closely with those issues that are top. Hands down in our little poll, we didn't poll every issue, but hands down, homelessness, the cost of living and housing were the three top issue areas for families, or for these likely November voters. Karen?
Yeah, hi, Karen Alden from Good to Know Network. Actually, what you just said, Christine, is it's not what I was going to talk about, but I think that messaging is important. I think, perhaps it's like postcards about the forum with to parents that talk about, parent power, you know what I mean? Like just basically targeting the particular group, because everyone has a slightly different take. We have a shared issue, which is the future of our children, but sort of different reasons for being really interested in that. And then the question was about how we get more participation. I think just very specifically and this is a small thing, but in the actual forum attendance, I think holding it at a time that's outside of childcare hours would help get actual childcare providers there. And then since it's a political event, I have no idea like what's allowed and what's not, but maybe tying it into some other like a share with other information that would be helpful, or a giveaway of children's books, something like that could also help.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, all great suggestions. We're hoping in the fall that we can do at least some of the events in person, and then make them more appealing to, more folks engaging. And with only 2 candidates that we're going to be talking with at the same time, we can do a lot. We can have a much different sort of approach to it. We don't have to have, we had what, 7 on the one that we did with Thrive. So we're looking, but I would welcome any suggestions around. I like the idea of a giveaway with books and stuff. Okay, we had one.
This is Sipor. Sorry, my camera's not working properly. I just have a quick response to what you were saying about Rocket Ship. I wonder if one of the reasons that Rocket Ship got so many folks is because they activated their own parent network of multiple schools, right? And so I wonder if one of the ways to get the constituents that you think are most important to show up at these candidate forums is to have, to also work with our networks to reach out to our constituents. So if it's early childhood, preschools, things like that, to have them email their own parent population, and also to have a few sentences in there to not overwhelm them about why this is important and how they can be good advocates for themselves and their families.
Yeah, we definitely want to work with networks that exist and outreach. I think we found through this one that it takes more than the email out. So I think, and that was probably Rocket Ship's success factor, that they have they're totally dedicated family advocate specialists who really, they're working directly with the families. So we just need to give them the extra push. But yeah, absolutely, we would love any help from all of the networks that are represented here as we have more events. And in the fall, we'll have more lead time. The primary was very fast. Everything happens all at once, and you have very few short weeks to get it all done. But we now have a lot more lead time. So we will be giving more notice and things. But thank you. I appreciate that. Those ideas. Petra,
I'm really hoping.
Probably taken up way more time than we were supposed to. So
you did, but this is kind of a lot of what we wanted to talk about, right? Was how do we take all of the great ideas that we have and really get that to turn into policy. And I think this is a really important way. And as you all know, we also, Thrive also works a lot on voter turnout. So it's a very nice dovetailing of the 2 issues where we can talk about the children's issues and get people to be more excited. And I think the people in this room have tremendous networks to get parents to these events. And I love the idea of just trying to make something that's either family friendly or just at a good time or whatever, and do it hybrid so you can stay at home and watch it, or so that you can come. And we'd love to work with you on creating those events for November. And I do love the idea that we have more lead time, and we figured it out. And this group worked on pulling together some of the questions, and honestly, we had way more questions than we had time to get to. So I would really look forward to being able to not just ask more questions, but also to be able to have time for follow-up and time for responses, so that it can be more of a conversation than we were able to do. And I do want to keep talking about this a little bit, because a lot of the issues that this leads to is, well, so we have this board of supervisors that we're trying to work with, but the board of supervisors is only capable of doing a certain amount of stuff, because there's also the county office of education, and for the older kids, and then there's a lot of different structures. So I want to put forth the idea of what else should we be doing? Candidate forums are great. It sounds like we're on board to do that. It sounds like there are a lot of people here who could bring more people to it. So yay, let's do that. what else should we be doing for influence? So one thing that I want to update you on, and this is more for the after school providers than for the preschool one, is that we have been talking a lot about getting better relations with the school districts, and specifically through the County Office of Education and Ruby, who came last time, who's now their community engagement liaison from the County Office of Education. And we have now confirmed, thanks to a bunch of meetings, and Petra has been super helpful on this, that the school districts are very interested in meeting with the CBOs and doing a half-day event in September, bringing everyone together and really talking about how we can create better relationships and be able to provide better services and more services to the children, and especially given the money that's coming down from the state, the ELO funding and other stuff, how to work closely with the school districts to get that money to the CBOs. So we have a tentative date in September, towards the end of September. And the reason for that date is that we want to make sure all of the school districts are back. Ruby is being very cognizant of making sure that we get the right people from each school district, because often that's one of the difficulties, is getting to the right person. So she's going to be taking care of that. And she said that, you know, when she's been meeting with the superintendents for the school districts, they're actually very excited about this. So that's a real positive. The next time we meet as a tag, we'll focus on what do we want to get out of the event. You know, great to have it, to get everybody in the same room. I think that's a huge first step. What do the CBOs want to get out of meeting with the school districts? So I just want to kind of start putting that in your mind as we're talking about this kind of collaboration. Jane, do you have a question?
You had asked if we had ideas, other ideas than candidate
Yes.
forums. So I'm responding to that. I don't know if it's time for that yet, or I can wait.
No, that's. I just wanted to kind of announce that we're working on this, and that's what we're going to do next time, so people start thinking about it.
Yeah.
And go back to what else we should be doing.
Well, one area I think is identifying what bills, what legislation is pending at the state, at local levels that we would want to support. That would support early childhood initiatives.
And this group covers both early childhood and kind of after school.
Yeah.
As well. So
Mhm.
it's Heather, you're often following what's going on. I don't actually know if there's anything specific happening right now because I've not been following it.
Specifically happening for what? Can you repeat that, please?
Sorry, just is there any state legislation we should be following or supporting?
Christine is our expert on state legislation.
Excellent. Well, we'll throw it back to Christine then.
And the budget, I think, just got finalized, and I see Karen's got a comment as well.
So there's SB 986, which is a bill to allow community partners to be part of the TK process, because the way it's written now, it can only be school districts, and it's causing a big problem for preschool providers. So I think there was supposed to be a hearing tomorrow, but then I heard it was canceled. So I'm not sure what's going on with it, but that's one that could use support and something that is important, because that will help the preschool providers if they can get some of the TK money and parents really have a choice. That would be very important.
Yeah, Karen, you probably have other
say,
things to add too.
I agree. That's a very important one. And I think it's also important. It's even broader than that, although, you know, that's a very important part of it, but it's really integrating early childhood from, you know, 0 through 5. And it includes the real barrier is that it will cost money, and there's, you know, so it's a it's unlikely to pass this time around because of it, but you know, it ensures livable wages for providers. It ensures that families don't have to pay an exorbitant amount, you know, more than they can afford for childcare. So it is it's a great one, but because of the way where we are in the cycle of things, it's probably not like the time to get everybody to support a certain bill.
It's too late.
I think the cycle is sort of ending, and then we'll start up again. So
Yeah, I would say, Karen, that it goes that SB 976 is has a hearing tomorrow, so it would really be a little too late. And it's a very ambitious bill that really lays out a comprehensive plan for what true universal pre-K preschool should look like. And it really touches on its support for the workforce, wages, as well as just training and development, support for families, prioritization of children that should be prioritized for services and things. So it's very comprehensive, but yes, highly unlikely because they made some changes to it. And so now it's based on appropriations and it's not included in the budget. So very unlikely that we'll see it happen this year, but it's gotten a lot of conversation going around it and a lot of people supporting it. I will say, Karen, I found yesterday they have made one amendment to the bill and they no longer state a living wage. They've gone back to insurance providers have to pay minimum wage. And that I'm not happy about because that is not what
That's
the original intention would be.
okay, so we need a new bill.
Yeah, so next year there's some new pieces. Yeah, they
Call it the Karen bill. Karen and Alden and I will do it together.
That's right. I think that sounds like a great plan. I haven't been following, I mean, I could, if you want me to take a few minutes and come back to the group and look up, I haven't been following the extended, there's a lot of really good bills around extended out of school time providers and funding for that. I don't track those ones as closely. A couple really great ones that I'm hoping will pass. Senator Becker has a bill that would provide full reimbursement for 2 meals a day for preschool providers, which is great. There is another one for waiving. If the budget passes, family fees will be waived for another full year, as well as hold harmless for programs, which is great. There's a couple ones that I really like. There's one to say it's like you can't have suspensions and expulsions, not just in state preschool programs, but in any program that's using the alternative payment plan or vouchers, as well as that bill provides resources for mental health supports and training. There's another bill that I hope will pass that will eliminate the crazy restriction that children with special needs can't play on the same playground as children who do not have special needs, which is an archaic bureaucratic thing that's in there. So I'm very hopeful that will pass. So there's a few smaller bills, but very exciting bills if they go through that will have a big impact on young kids. So, and there's tons more. Those just happen to be the ones that I have on my tracker that SVCF is supporting. So.
One of the things I'd like to understand from the districts is what they're planning to do. Because I think some are planning to go into TK, some are planning to do more preschool and shift some of the preschool around. The other thing that I think would be really interesting to know is some districts are adding equity positions, and that is a huge ally for us. Because the equity components, I think, really start with the district staff who are getting paid differently because of teacher wages, as well as the way they receive and prioritize preschoolers.
Those are really good questions, Heather. And this is probably going to be one of those things where they're going to be like, oh, it's district by district. But since Ruby meets with all of the districts, those would be great questions for her. And she actually apologizes. She was totally intending on being here today and then got pulled into another meeting. But in general, she is planning on being here kind of to give us the school district perspective as much as possible.
And And I think we have to go district by district. I mean, there's 23 of them. It's not too many to track. And it holds them accountable to each other as well, which I don't see necessarily happening.
I do
Rachel, that
believe,
sounds, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, Heather, that all the district TK plans have got to be adopted by their school boards by the end of June. And so by the end of this month, we should be able to have access to the plan for each district in the, and there's been some talk back and forth about what to do about districts that are basic aid who won't receive ADA, funding for transitional kindergarten. And I don't know what they're, I don't know where that's landed yet, but by the end of this month, we should, there should be a plan for every one of those districts that serves elementary students. So that could be helpful.
And the other thing I'd like to know is what are the districts, like where do we fall into the district mindset? And is that going to change in the next 12 months?
Why do you say the next 12 months? Does it have to do with because there's a change, or just because of where we are
really just because we're going through this process where they want to meet with us, we want to meet with them. So are they thinking that things will change after this meeting and in the next year? Or is this just a nice thing to do?
Well, that's exactly what I want to avoid. Like, that's why we're going to be doing pre-work, so we figure out what we do. And Ruby said that she's going to do pre-work with the districts as well, so that they know what we're trying to get out of it. So we're not just, I mean, absolutely baseline, we have to just get to know each other. Like, that is totally important. We will make sure that there's coffee and Danishes so that there's time for just getting to know each other. But we want to have like a really set goals and set agenda for whatever's top of our mind, whatever's top of their mind, and then try to mesh it together so that we have goals. And then what we're hoping is that we continue with these tag meetings to follow through on them, so that it's not just like one and done, but like, okay, this is what the goals we set out are, and this is kind of a timeline, and then we're going to meet next month and see where we've gotten on that.
So I wonder if instead of goals, Petra, I wonder if instead of goals, we look for a commitment. Like, we actually ask somebody to agree to a paragraph, that you're gonna be involved in working with your CBO partners, something that's really tangible, that we can feel like we're moving forward together. And we sign too.
I love that. And for us to come up with what we think that commitment should be, and then they can come up with stuff, and then when we're together, we can work it out to what everybody feels comfortable with, and what we think we can do, and then have check-ins. Is there anything anybody else wants to say about like what kinds of things they would look for, what kinds of commitment you would want from school districts working with CBOs? Karen?
Hi, I'm with the JJDPC, and Tony Barrick and I had been working on, over the past 2 years, looking into programs for primary and middle school children in underserved areas of our county. And with all of the new ELOP funding, there are so many opportunities to expand programming. And we've been struggling to try to find out what's going on. We feel it's part of our role in advising the Board of Supervisors on programs and services that could impact youth being involved in the juvenile justice system, and understanding how these funds are being, these millions and millions of dollars that are coming into our county are being optimally used would be really important. And we've found that it's really difficult for us to get any information right now on what's going on. So it's not even a matter of being able to assess what's going on and understand it. It's just not having any information at all. So we would love to be part of this process from the standpoint of seeing the progress that's being made to utilize these funds. We're trying to stay up to date on what's happening in the rest of California with other counties other districts who are employing creative ways to utilize these funds. And so my pitch would be just that we could be involved. We're not providers, but we are very interested in understanding, the outcome. So we'd love to stay involved.
I think you're not the only one frustrated about trying to figure out where these funds are and where they're going. We'd like to know there's a lot, and we know there are 23 districts, but to figure out like how to get that money to the CBOs, or if the school districts are using it for something else, this has been, to say the least, I think frustrating for a lot of people.
Understood.
And the money's coming, it's going to continue to come.
Right. And I think we have kind of a golden period right now for the next year where plans don't have to be submitted yet, and they're not going to be audited on numbers and utilization. But after that, if plans aren't in place, that money could be taken back, which would be sad.
James?
Yeah, I think another aspect that would be important is to see how CBOs can have longevity with whatever programs are being implemented. So rather than short-term periods, that it's so important, especially with early education, with elementary after-school programs, continuity of the same people being in the lives of these children. So that's when, as we're coming together and seeing how we can collaborate and fill gaps in areas, how can we be planning for longevity with this? I'm thinking of a year. So a year to year kind of thing.
And the funding is actually permanent funding, not just there's a lot of kind of ARPA funding and COVID funding and stuff that's going to stop and end, but a lot of the ELOP funding is not. That is going to be permanent funding. So that's actually a real difference. And I think for the CBOs that have been getting short-term relief, to know that this other funding is going to be permanent is, I think, a real positive, and something hopefully that we can build on.
Which bodes well for this interconnection between school districts and CBOs.
I know that we heard from the Marin Promise Partnership in this group about a year or so ago, and I wondered if anybody had any information on how they have kind of mobilized to utilize their funding from ELOP.
That is a great question. Anybody feel like giving them a call and finding out? I'm happy to, but
I mean, it was kind of on my list to do at some point, but I don't know if somebody else wants to.
I'm happy to give my hand towards it and see what I can find out. Part of our area is Marin, so I'm in Marin right now. That's where my office is, so I'm happy to give that a shot.
I'm happy.
That would be great.
If you, go for it.
Let's
we had
both
them come.
Yeah,
they were.
that would be great.
It was if you guys want to exchange emails in the chat, so you have each
Yes.
other's email.
I will put my email in and we can touch base.
When they spoke a year ago, they really were just a tremendous example of a really good partnership between the school districts. And for those of you who aren't, between school districts and CBOs, they really did an amazing job. So anything we can do to have their kind of success, and if they're being successful on this as well, that would be terrific to know about. There's been a bunch of people who've been very quiet. Is there anything anybody else wants to add that hasn't had a chance to speak up about this, about either thing, how to get on the political side, how to get people more involved, and then also how to get the school districts, what to ask for from them.
I can tell you about Belmont River Shores, but I'm not real happy about it. So, are you interested in what they're doing?
Yes.
So they had a meeting last year, maybe in February, of all the on-site after-school programs. And told us they were not going to renew our leases unless we were the providers for the ELOP program and provide services at like pennies to the dollar. No, nothing close to what we charge. And they made us fill out this long application that was actually the state's application for the ELOP process. And several of the providers freaked out and couldn't understand what they were doing. And to make a long story short, they decided to go with a different thing. They've hired the YMCA of San Francisco to come in and do a program for 5 weeks at each school that will rotate. And that is what they're doing for the ELOP program. So our after-school programs got our leases. We don't have to change our program or provide care for the kids. But for those families, and there's a lot of them, all they're being offered is a 5-week program at their school site. Then the next 5 weeks will be at a different school site. So instead of getting after-school care, the school year and holidays, they're also doing a summer program. They are doing a summer program. They're doing like an 8-week summer program. But for the school year, they're doing this rotating thing. But they've also let us know that they've gotten permission for it for this year, but they're not sure if it's going to fly for next year, depending on what the auditors or the state said. So we might again have to provide the care for the kids and not get paid for it, basically. So that's where we stand. It totally freaked me out for weeks. I was really stressed out, and I'm happy to provide the services if they pay us for it, or even pay us half of what we're charging families. But because I believe that the children should get quality programs, no matter what their economic status is. But to tell us we couldn't, we've been there for 27 years, and to tell us we couldn't get our lease renewed unless we provided hundreds of spaces for free is basically what they were telling us, or at like hardly anything. It was really crazy. So that's where we stand at BRSSD. They're doing a 5-week program that will rotate.
So sorry, just logistically. So if you are a kid at one school and you go to an after school program, and then 5 weeks later you have to go to another school to get the after school care?
I don't even know if they can do that. I think maybe you can only go when it's at your school, but I really don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Or I guess if your parents provide transportation, then you could go to another school and stay on it. But it's really crazy.
Okay. Sounds like having them in the same room as us would make for an interesting conversation.
I'm kind of mixed, because when they told me we didn't have to do it, I was like, oh my gosh, because they said at Nesbitt School alone, we may have to add an extra 100 children to our program. And that would almost double our program. And then it's an underfunded mandate for schools like BRSSD that don't have a huge amount of kids who qualify. And so they wanted to pass through the money they were getting to the state to us, which would be like nothing, really, really nothing. So I was relieved that I didn't have to do it, but I was upset at how they're doing it and what they're providing for those families, because it's just not fair to those families. So
Okay, sounds like we have lots of work to do and lots of things to talk about. So with that, I want to thank Christine and Marnie for coming and sharing about Choose Children, and thank all of you for being here. And we will meet again in July and really focus deeply on what we want out of the meetings with the school district. And have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Petra, for hosting us.
Sure.